We're behind the blue curtain. We're live here. Hello, welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to do the Derpies 2025 edition. But before we do that, Buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
You know, on this podcast, we talk about games, we talk about movies, we talk about my good old, my most important topic, I feel like, of 2025, which has been Magic the Gathering for us. um, and I think it's about time that we wrap up the year that was. 2025. What did the Derpies sort of look like? How do they go? How do they play? What was 25 across our whole sort of bandwidth, kind of like is typically where we go with these. So yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
Congratulations, bam.
If, in case this is the first time you are tuning in, um, we do this a little bit differently than most award shows. Up top, we will give you our 3 games of the year. Those categories are games as sport, games as art, and games as games, which is kind of our overall game of the year award. And then after that, each of us will in turn throw out a category and our nominee for it, and the other one will on the fly uh, think of an answer to that and respond with it. And there'll be a little bit of discussion, but the later categories can be a little bit weird. So let's start off with games of sport. You okay with that, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, my games of sport award goes to Arc Raiders, which is probably unsurprising to anybody who's been following us lately. I have put let me double check this, but I'm pretty sure I'm at 144 hours, which is not a crazy amount of time, but it is a lot of times given that it came out in October. Um, it has basically been all I've been playing besides Raid, I guess, with like a little diversions elsewhere. Um, it is just a super fun loop. But we have talked about the flaws and how it's kind of starting to fall off, which is part of why I'm looking forward to future things, both in this game and in other games in the genre. But I do think this is kind of the watershed version of this is either the PUBG or the Fortnite of the extraction shooter genre. And we'll I guess see if there's a because PUBG was the first battle royale with wide appeal that everybody got into. It's obviously not the one, or not everybody, that a lot of people got into. It's obviously not the widespread success that Fortnite is as an equivalent. And maybe that will never come for the extraction shooter genre, but I do think that it is the dawning of the genre, as it were, despite like earlier kind of attempts. Any thoughts on Arc Raiders, or do you want to move on to your?
I do want to say that Arc Raiders was able to capture me, and I guess I would say this is maybe the best credit that I can give Arc Raiders. It's a genre that I typically just don't spend a lot of time in. I'm not a PvP shooter guy. I kind of have never been a PvP sort of shooter guy. And so the fact that Arc Raiders was able to squeeze you know, double digits number of hours out of me is actually quite respectable, I would say. I think it is I don't know, it's a good complete sort of representation of um what you can offer, I guess I would say, when you think outside the box and want to push the nature of um I don't know, a huge gigantic big boy genre forward. So that would probably be uh that's what I want to say about our creators, I guess. My answer for games as sport is certainly a little bit complicated. But I want to give it, I think, to Hearthstone Battlegrounds. This has been the one that I find myself craving in the most sort of like basic, most straightforward kind of way. So Hearthstone Battlegrounds is the auto battler that Hearthstone that uses sort of like Hearthstone minis and stuff like that. Or not minis, but like minions. They update the seasons every once in a while. I played a lot of Battlegrounds a couple of years ago. I didn't super, I was there at the BlizzCon when it first was sort of announced and previewed, and I played it there. But I was never a very like hardcore sort of Battlegrounds person. But now it is the game that I go to in order to access that kind of competitive PvP sort of part of my brain that is about pitched competition against other, like against other players sort of online. There's a number of things that have made Hearthstone Battlegrounds good this year. In fact, I would actually probably say that the season we're currently in is not great, but the previous season was excellent. But to go into those details would actually be kind of impossible because it would require extensive, explanations on what the meta looks like for any of these individual games. So suffice to say that the boundaries of what make for sort of interesting play in Hearthstone have been expanding quite a lot over the course of this year, going from quests to buddies to what we have right now, which is called time warped. Like time warped minions. You get a special set of minions that are like super powerful version of other minions from like an alternate timeline is sort of the philosophy. But yeah, just the more time and effort I put into it, the more I find myself just kind of I guess snacking on this for my games as sport context. The next category is games as art. This one is a little bit complicated, and I have to go to a sort of interesting sort of place. This is, to the best of my knowledge, the first repeat winner in this category, but my answer has to go to the Banner Saga from maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
It's got to
This
be
all
more than
comes down.
that.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. This is mostly that I actually did not play very many games as art. I played games for work and I played games for sort of like sport and strategy and stuff like that, but there were just not a lot of games that were on my radar that were about sort of just consuming a fixed straightforward single player project to give me, the, I don't know, the juice that I'm looking for when it comes to sort of like a narrative game. What is the year of it? It's got to be like 2018, right? Or something?
For three, one was 2014.
Oh,
You give
oh
me
my
Game of
God.
the Year to an 11-year-old game, buddy.
I feel like I Game of the Year Banner Saga a long time ago.
You might have, yeah.
But anyway, the reason the Banner Saga has sort of won this category for me is that on my trip to Australia, where I had my Switch and very little else, it was the Banner Saga that I played and I found most gripping. I actually played a number of different games, including, strangely enough, Hades, which is a game that was certainly a contender for this category. Hollow Knight, also a contender for this category. But the reality is that those games just didn't connect me to what I wanted, what I was looking for, in the same way that the Banner Saga did. And reconnecting with the Banner Saga after 11 years, I suppose, was just a truly excellent, fun, beautiful jaunt into what games, especially indie games, kind of have to offer, which is exactly what games as art are kind of here for. So there you go. Banner Saga, after long, many years, finally gets the recognition it deserves.
Fair enough. Fair enough. My entry into this is going to be, as you maybe hinted at, Hades 2. I will say this is kind of a backhanded compliment, in that it grabs this award because one, I did not play any kind of like traditional arts game. Like traditionally, I give this something like Return of the Obra Dinn or a similar indie game that I just haven't played this year. But it's backhanded in that I think that it wasn't good enough to rise to full game of the year status, and didn't get any other kind of consideration. I will say it basically was between this and Silksong for kind of like my this category has kind of hit the second place game of the year for this year because both have like a decent artfulness to them, but have other problems. I think that the Hades 2 has a very specific problem that kind of dovetails with Hades 1, which is that the I think you could kind of, it's a form of ludonarrative dissonance, which is that um, advancing the story happens at the end of completion runs, and so you are incentivized to not bump the difficulty to keep it challenging if you want to just kind of like get your story reps in, which is what happened to me. Ultimately, I was like I hit a level of difficulty that I couldn't consistently beat, and so I just dropped it down to nothing so I could get the last few story beats. Um, before it ran. That being said, it is getting games as art of the year for a reason. It is beautifully illustrated. The story is a bit more serious and a bit more interesting than the Hades one story. Um, and so I will give it its plaudits for that. I really enjoyed my time with the game. I have not yet gone back to it since I beat the first ending. They reworked parts of it because people were unsatisfied with the ending, which is not an opinion that I shared. But um, the that is I guess all I will say about that on the arts front. It is a beautiful game.
Yeah,
with
which
great
leaves
music.
a pretty obvious. So I'm gonna bet I can guess your game of the year. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So my game of the year is Expedition 33, Clair Obscur, specifically the French dub. But yeah, you know, Clair Obscur is overrated is now, I guess, a meme online, but I think it is rated, I guess. I certainly don't think it's underrated, but it is. It really was something excellent. It is not maybe as transformative as its like biggest boosters want to say, but it does combine a number of things, of innovations in kind of the JRPG style game space. It is beautiful art wise. It is we kind of have a mutual exclusion rule for the subcategories, and so I actually think this is a better, more artful game than Hades 2 as well. It is absolutely stunning to look at, absolutely filled kind of with a lot of passion and evident passion and evident kind of beats that the story really clearly meant something to someone. And I don't think it's a perfect game by any means, but for a relatively small team, um, it really is just kind of like the thing. It is the type of game that makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside in terms of like a mastery of a craft perspective, right? There are shortcomings. There are pieces that maybe could have used. It's maybe a little rough around the edges, but the combination of innovative storytelling and memorable characters and innovative gameplay all really clicked for me, and it was easily far and above my game of the year.
Okay. My game of the year, also maybe not much of a surprise, is Europa Universalis 5, which released towards the tail end of the year and gripped me right around the throat like it deserved to. I we've talked a lot about paradox games over the years, and strategy games at their heart are kind of like I kind of think of myself in a core gamer, almost more as a strategy gamer, than really any other kind of gamer at this point. And to say that Europa Universalis 5 is the apex of that tradition, is really sort of saying something. I've been through launches this year of strategy games. Don't forget, Civilization 7 came out this year to thunderously terrible reviews and plenty of problems that frankly I would say still aren't fixed. If I go to Civilization, do we think that it's got an above mixed rating? Nope, it is still mixed, straight 50-50 down the line. After a full year of development and patches and fixes, they just haven't been able to get things together, right? I was there for the launch of Total War Warhammer 3. We did multiple podcasts where I kept talking about how frustrated I was about the, kind of the state of Warhammer 3 and how I wanted things to be different and more and whatever else and all those kinds of things. So to have Europa Universalis launch and just be, God, so gripping was something I really, man, I needed it. I loved it. I loved every second of it. I loved watching videos that were hours long explaining these concepts that I still don't really understand that much, to be honest with you. And also, they have released a number of patches and hotfixes that have confused things even further and made it so that my current Spain run is actually kind of borked, but I'm probably going to continue on with it because that's the nature, that's the spirit of the game. Europa Universalis is in many ways, I think of as the ultimate sort of paradox game. I think that if anybody were to sort of make an argument about what kind of the Clausewitz engine is built for and what you're supposed to do and how it's supposed to play, it is about, getting a big gigantic army and painting the map, painting map colors, right? Um, and Crusader Kings can do that. Stellaris can do that. I'm sure Imperator and Vicky 3, which are games that I haven't even touched, can also do that. But really at the heart of this philosophy, in my mind, is in fact Europa Universalis 5. The big thing I'm looking forward to is adding it to my mainstay rotation, where it is the kind of game that I keep coming back to, again and again as new pieces of DLC come out and new expansions, and oh, this is a sweet new feature, and they're going to add blank, and I'm going to get to be able to do, whatever, all of that kind of stuff. I feel like is going to be really great, and so, my game of the year, EU5.
Excellent, awesome. Yeah. Well, we've hit the end of our categories, and since you are on the, I guess you're up to bat with the first, the first.
Okay, we'll just start with an easy one because 2025 was not a very good year for movies for me, especially because the thing that I expected to put in this category I haven't even fucking seen yet. But I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will get there when I have less stressful weekends on my mind. I want to give the Derpy for the best movie of 2025 to Superman. Mostly because it's one of the only movies I saw, and it happens to be the one that I liked the most. We did a whole podcast on it. I didn't particularly love it, but I also thought it was a good time, and I was pretty into it. There were a number of other 2025 movies that I did end up sort of seeing, and all of them felt just sort of lesser than what Superman kind of offered in terms of going to a theater and seeing the spectacle. One of the things that I really lost moving from Los Angeles to New Hampshire is just kind of the regularity with which I was going to see movies just all the fucking time. And even though it has gotten me to the point where I just am spending less and less time watching movies than before, or watching a lot of them on streaming. So, for instance, one of the contenders that we did on the podcast this year was Frankenstein, which I liked less than Superman. So, just easy, straightforward popcorn answer to this is Superman.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You know, I feel like it's cheating to give it to Ephus.
I thought about it. Ephus was my clear runner-up. It was, did I like Superman more than I liked Ephus? And I think the answer was that I was a little too favorable in a way. I just think I like the raw movie of Superman better than the raw movie of Ephus.
No, that is totally fair, right? And Ephus is
I do love that movie, yeah.
Is a very different type of movie, right? Like, I think mine. What's my answer? Hold on. What's the?
Is it that Basque language movie from?
So that one was not this year, so I feel bad giving it to it. It's like the Bell and the Devil or something. The Blacksmith and the Devil.
Mm-hmm.
The movie I'm going to give it to, this is a real weeb cut, is Jujutsu Kaisen Execution, which my wife made me go see. It is the bridge between season 2 and season 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which I believe the first episode of the third season comes out in like 4 or 5 days at this point. So Superman was good. Victor Frankenstein was good, but in terms of just like pure kind of like I enjoyed it. Uh Jujutsu Kaisen has to be it just because like I like Jujutsu Kaisen in the general sense. It was more Jujutsu Kaisen. I had a it does this thing that I hate, but it was enough obviously to knock me off of it, which is you kind of like there is a cliffhanger that gets resolved in a kind of non-specific way. Spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen fans out there, but season 2 ends with a character from the first movie who has kind of reappeared for the first time in the series, saying that he taking on the job of executing the main character, and it gets resolved pretty quickly within like or it gets resolved in a way that isn't particularly satisfying in the movie. I will leave it at that, so I don't spoil too much for those at home who has not watched. But needless to say, our main character does not get executed, which you would probably expect, but it's not even kind of like in a particularly cool way. So I will give it back.
I think I saw less than 5 2025 movies based on just my quick look. It is Frankenstein, Superman, Ephus, and the How to Train Your Dragon remake. These seem to be the only movies from 2025 that I watched. Oh wait, hold on. When did Captain America came out in 2025, right? This what okay, Captain America Brave New World did come out in 2025. So that was the 5th movie that I saw. So
Yeah, I have not watched it. I am vaguely interested in getting caught up on Marvel stuff, but that's
I do want to have like a State of the Union, sort of State of the Marvel sort of like episode at some point where we do that, right? Just catch up on everything, because I watched Thunderbolts and I watched Captain America on the plane from Australia. I know that Fantastic Four I think is on Disney Plus, which is the only other one that I haven't seen, and maybe there's one other one that I haven't seen, and just kind of picking up where things kind of left off, taking a look at some of this stuff, especially as they're doing these tremendously like nostalgia bait Avengers Doomsday ads. I feel like
part of the catch up for me is I never watched like the TV series, like any of them basically. I watched WandaVision. I think that's it. And I want to go back and theoretically, like I'm interested in Moon Knight. I just haven't. Oh, you know what? We did watch. Did you watch Loki? Did we do Loki for this?
We did Loki because I did. Man, did we finish? I might not have finished the 2nd season of Loki, but I definitely, because we definitely talked about the 1st season, but I think I just ran out of time and I didn't watch the whole thing, and maybe I never went back to it.
Okay, yeah, because I think I finished it. I just need to double check on like Wikipedia. Oh yes, no, I definitely finished the 2nd season of Loki because right, because it's post Jonathan Majors, right? Like that is the wild thing.
Oh right, oh my god, holy shit! I completely forgot about Jonathan Majors and Kang. Someday there's gonna be like a book about like the Kang of it all. It's like gonna be some magnum opus on what happened to the state of the Marvel Cinematic Movie franchise after.
I'm telling you, just have Don Cheadle play Kang. He's done the swap. He's done the swap. You can even like make a joke about it, right? Like they are apparently making a joke out of the fact that Robert Downey Jr. is playing Doom, right? Like that like him. Like the fact that he looks like, Tony Stark is going to be a plot point is what I have heard about Doom. Yeah.
That sounds so hacky. Holy shit.
Well, hey, they made
Has Marvel jumped the shark? This is like a podcast for a future.
I always think back to what is it, Ocean's 12, where like the plot point is that like it's Julia Roberts, right? Like
Julia Roberts looks like Julia Roberts.
Yeah. The character Julia Roberts is playing looks like Julia Roberts, and they use that as a thing. Which
in the movie. By the way, I don't know if we've ever talked about the Ocean's movies. That scene and that piece of Ocean's 12 gets so much hate that is undeserved. I think it's brilliant and it was a great time.
I actually, so it's been a little while, but maybe a year or so ago, maybe a little bit longer, I watched, I think with my family, all three Ocean's movies, the original ones, and Logan Lucky. Um,
Oh, I
uh,
love Logan Lucky.
and what I remember is that that scene isn't the thing that made me dislike Ocean's 12. It's basically that the whole conceit is that there's like that the whole thing's a work, right? Like that the
Yeah.
whole movie isn't real in a way, right? Like, which I didn't like as much as Ocean's 11 or 13, which is why I think they went back to kind of the more traditional formula in 13.
Yeah, I like Ocean's 13 a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it's Al Pacino is the villain in 13 because they're working for Benedict, who is not Al Pacino, but whatever that other guy from The Godfather 3's name is. And I remember really loving Ocean's 13. I remember thinking Ocean's 13
And
was
that
really
weird
fun
French
and
guy
clever.
comes back too.
Yes, oh, I love the weird French guy. This is also part of what I like about Ocean's 12. I love all three of those movies. I think that they're all great. But the other part that everybody really hates about Ocean's 12 is the part of Ocean's 12 where the laser is like, we can't get past this laser. You can't hack it, you can't shut it down, and the pattern is randomized, so you can't even like predict on where to go. And then there's the part at the end where they try and fill in the plot hole of like, wait, how did you get past the laser? And it just smash cuts to like Euro dance, pop music, and you watch this guy do a whole little, like dance through the fucking lasers. Everybody hates that because they think it's cheap. I think it's fucking awesome. I think that shit is brilliant, to be honest with you, as just like a fucking skill issue. I improved my way through. I'm just better than all of you at this kind of thing.
Oh, man. For whatever reason, in my head, the French guy from Ocean's 12 is the Merovingian, which I know is not correct, but like,
He's definitely not the Merovingian. That's true. I actually also think about him as the ballet instructor from Black Swan.
Okay.
It's the same guy.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, who knows? Movies 20. I also want to put an asterisk, which is that when I do see Avatar Fire and Ash, I'm sure it will probably be the best thing ever because I love James Cameron and I love these stupid Avatar movies. I watched Avatar The Way of the Water with Rachel the other night. I was just assembling Warhammer minis because she hadn't seen it. And I was like, listen, James Cameron put Titanic in Avatar. It's great. Let's just watch it. And she was like, I'm really tired. It was like 11:30. We ended up going to bed at like 2:30 in the morning because it's a super long movie, but it's fucking great. I love these movies. I'm sure I will love the third one. They are made for me. I don't care. We're gonna go hard.
All right. Well, I guess it's my category now, which
Sure.
I will pick out is a nice companion piece. I think the best movie is best long form video essay, which I'm sure you'll have an answer for. Mine is from Defunctland, Disney's Living Characters: A Broken Promise, which is just a follow up to his video from last year, which is kind of the history of Disney animatronics or history of animatronics in general, with the lens. With the kind of focal point being on Disney stuff, as the last year's video kind of ends with Abraham Lincoln, and this year's video is kind of like the modern era of them and how they kind of never live up to exactly what Disney wanted them to be. The information there is great. It's like a 4.5 hour long video, if I remember correctly. It is just, it is super well researched, and he just has like, perfect a perfect delivery, right? He has this amazing dry wit that gets me every time, right? Like pointing out like why do all of these animatronics decide that they need to flirt with the guests, right? Like, but does it in a much funnier way than I just said, right? Like, or the one of the things they demo is basically like the skeleton for an animatronic dinosaur, and He gives the way it's like it was like 7,000 pounds and like 6 feet high. It's like for our metric viewers that is like way too big, right? Like it's, instead of like giving the conversion, like he just like has the perfect cadence for it. And so between the humor and the research and the presentation, and generally educational content on a semi interesting topic, uh, I have to give it to Defunct Land for Disney's Living Characters: A Broken Promise.
Okay. Best video essay is actually a little tough for me because, I want to say that I've fallen out of love a little bit with some quite a number of video essayists over the course of 2025, where they're just not hitting in the same place that I thought they were. But there is a really great metric for this, which is the number of times I have watched a video. And right now, the video Man Tracks a True Story of the Fake Fossils by Folding Ideas, who I think I have given this award to on a number of different occasions, is at 2.2 million views, and I'm at least half of those. I have watched this just so many fucking times. It is the easiest thing for me to just kind of like sit and sort of put on the background and go through the whole process for. Again, it's hard to describe the way in which he tells a story that connects with me and excites me and informs me kind of all at the same time. Man Tracks, this A True Story of Fake Fossils, is about Roland Bird, who is a fossil hunter from New York. Actually, he worked for the Museum of Natural History in Manhattan, and he went to a river basin in Texas where he found just these absolutely massive sauropod footprints. And the sauropod footprints obviously implied the sort of nature of dinosaurs and became pretty important to sort of the fossilization of basically everything that goes into paleontology. And it later became a hotbed for creationist, there's just like no other way to put it, creationist people who etched human footprints into the same stones, because what they wanted to do was imply that dinosaurs and humans lived sort of side by side. And Dan Olson tells the story of both the paleontological side of it, of like the importance of this discovery with all of this texture and detail, that's like really great and awesome. And then also just completely rails on essentially these morons who come through and add this creationist element to what is otherwise a truly profound scientific discovery. So, for the me watching it about 100 bazillion times, there it is. I want to give it to Man Tracks.
Okay. Right.
Okay, my next category, we'll go a little off the walls, okay? Mostly because this is one of those categories that I am inventing stupid category because I just want to brag about something a little bit. So the category is my favorite Magic the Gathering play from this year. Okay, so the favorite individual play of Magic the Gathering. Magic has obviously been a pretty big staple for us this year, including just a truly staggering number of games and really interesting, complex board states. But the thing that I wanted to talk about actually happened just last week at your house. I guess this was on Monday. I called it "Letting the Nexus of Fates Resolve." So to set the stage, I'm playing my deck Takesia. I have a pretty powerful engine out, and I have milled a huge amount of my deck into my graveyard. And then Mango has in fact exiled my deck. I have a card in my deck called Nexus of Fates. Nexus of Fates says if Nexus of Fates would ever be put into a graveyard, it gets shuffled into its owner's library instead, which is a really powerful effect for a deck like Takesia that wants to, throw cards off the top. You're milling yourself a ton in Takesia because you're trying to get a bunch of stuff in sort of the graveyard in order to use it. Nexus of Fates prevents you from milling yourself out because every time you mill it out, you just shuffle it right back in. Mango was playing Jasper Flint, Rango, which is a thief deck. It's a deck that exiles cards from the top of an opponent's library, right, in order to play cards from outside of there. And Mango had a particularly powerful set of plays where he was able to exile an extra turn spell that was not Nexus of... Oh, and this is the other part of Nexus of Fate. Nexus of Fate is an extra turn spell, so it's take an extra turn after this one. That's what it does. He was able to exile another extra turn spell and then use it, and was on his extra turn and had exiled Nexus of Fate and needed to attack me in order to generate tokens in order to play the Nexus of Fate, right? And I had this opportunity. This was the decision I had before me. I had the opportunity to block enough creatures to prevent the Nexus of Fate from getting the mana needed to cast it, thereby leaving it in exile and preventing Mango from resolving this powerful extra turn spell. And in the moment, I took like half a second to just think through where we were at in the game, and I said, "Oh, I'm not going to block any of it, and you can cast the spell." And the reason why is because I just didn't see a game-winning line without Nexus of Fates in my deck. I was just pretty sure I was going to mill myself out at that point. I had a draw engine that was pretty powerful and working kind of better than intended. And I just knew that what was likely to happen is that I would get Nexus of Fate shuffled back into my deck after Mango cast it, because that's how it works. And so long as he didn't hit it on his next extra turn upkeep with Jasper Flint, I would probably win the game on the next turn because of just other cards I sort of had in my hand. But in order to make that decision, I had to sort of stare down a couple of malices in the face. The first of which is that I was taking a bunch of damage from attacking creatures. My life was pretty high, but it was not so high that that was insignificant. The second is that I had to grant my opponent, who was in first place and was threatening a sort of lethal game lock, by exiling my Nexus of Fate over and over again. So basically I had 30 cards in my deck at that time. Mango was exiling the top 8 cards, which gives about a 30% chance that on the following upkeep, when he casts the extra turn, he can exile Nexus of Fate and then cast it. And then he'd just be able to chain that for the rest of the until he takes infinite extra turns and kills sort of all of us. So I was kind of gambling on a 30% auto loss right there as well. And then the final piece is that I had to be able to kind of rip things out of the deck and keep my, my kind of engine together, which was not a guarantee. I was pretty clearly the threat. People were attacking me down, and I just wasn't sure that I was going to be able to make it out of that situation alive. But I made the call. I was like, I think my only game-winning line is, in fact, to let this Nexus of Fates resolve. And then when it comes to my upkeep and I can do a bunch of stuff, I'm pretty sure I think I can win if it sort of goes my way. Obviously, I wouldn't be bragging about it if it didn't, in fact, go my way, because it kind of did. But I just think of this as like emblematic of the kinds of plays that make Takesia such a great deck, and such a fun experience to put it all together and all of the rest of that. And so that was my favorite Magic the Gathering play of this year. The counterintuitive nature of the high risk line of letting the Nexus of Fates resolve.
All right. Yeah. No, that makes plenty of sense. Mine is also going to be from this week, and it's not going to be a good play. I'm going to point this out just because it was so insane to resolve, which was casting Guthrie Writes History with both a Possibility Storm and a Hive Mind out, which was just the most absurd thing in the world to get resolved, because it copied for everyone, and then some of those Guff triggers also caused Hive Mind to proc, and it was just like the most absurd thing that that I've ever played. I feel like that card took like 20 to 30 minutes just to resolve on its own terms, right? because I forget what I rolled it into, but the thing I rolled it into wasn't particularly. No, I did. It was a copy spell, and I almost and I decided to
I
end the
wish it would have been. I sort of wish that we had played it all the way out. I kind of wonder, I've been thinking about this ever since that game of like, what would be the most truly bonkers sort of game of Magic to play that includes obviously Jeff, but it's just like, what if everybody played their most insane chaotic decks, right? What would that sort of look like? With the goal of just creating insanely complicated stacks and combos and all of the rest of that kind of thing. I don't really know that anybody has decks that are even close to Jeff in terms of being cool and fun in that way, but if
Yeah,
so,
I think part of the problem is that like the reason it works is because it's going against normal decks and you're pulling normal
yeah.
stuff out of it. Otherwise, the board state just doesn't advance, right? Like, yeah, I could copy another 7 like weird spells that Jeff plays, but like that's also like not the most satisfying thing in the world. But Possibility Storm, Hive Mind, I think is just kind of like a fun like that feels like you could base a format around it type of deal, right? Like, just trying to
Yeah,
like
so just to explain what those two effects do, by the way, Possibility Storm says that whenever you cast a spell, you counter that spell, and instead that you shuffle that spell
you
into
exile it.
your Oh, I'm sorry, you exile that spell, and you're gonna end up shuffling it into your library, putting it on the bottom of your library, and then you flip cards from the top of your library until you get a same spell at the same time. So basically, what it is it turns your deck into a giant casino. You cast a creature, and it goes, okay, that creature's going to the bottom of your deck, and you're just gonna flip from the top until you find a creature. Um, and then you cast that spell from exile, and then Hive Mind says whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, each other player copies that spell and can choose new targets for the copy. So basically, if you ever possibility storm with an instant or sorcery, you are generating 9 spells worth, in our case 9 because we had a 5-person fod, the 9 spells worth of a stack just like immediately to resolve, because the first spell gets copied a bunch of times, and then the possibility storm resolves, and the possibility storm spell gets copied a bunch of times. So fun,
Yeah,
crazy, complicated.
and
Love
and
that.
and part of the thing here is that the second spell, the spell you pull out of Possibility Storm is optional, but the Hive Mind copies are not. They
Yeah.
must be copied and targeted. So fun times all around. But yeah,
I honestly, it's funny to me. People were frustrated when we played. I get that. I understand how like that kind of sort of like board state is like crazy and all of the rest of it. But frankly, from my perspective, man, that shit is so fun. It is hilarious. And also, I just love Possibility Storm. I
yeah,
feel like I understand that it's frustrating because it completely ruins your ability to like strategize, right? But what it says to me when I have Possibility Storm in play is, oh, my cheap spells are going to cheat me a lot of mana. If I know that I have creatures in my deck that are 6 or 7 or 8 mana creatures, and I can trade a 2 mana creature for an 8 mana creature, fuck yeah, I'm gonna take that trade. And so if there's a little bit of like, you just gotta roll with it with Possibility Storm and Hive Mind.
I feel like it'd be interesting to build a deck around like trying to intentionally use Possibility Storm to to like manipulate your top deck such that you know what you're rolling into. But part of the problem with Commander format is actually pulling the Possibility Storm would require pretty heavy tutoring, I think. And it'd be a tough thing to actually pull off. But it might be.
There are a couple of formats that are around stuff like that. So for instance, there's like a global enchantment format basically that just includes a bunch of stuff in there. It's like a deck of 20 enchantments, and you just flip them periodically when like stuff happens. And that's the kind of one that you want to put Possibility Storm, Hive
Yeah,
Mind, like that kind of stuff in there.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess that brings it to my category. Um, I'm going to call the category is going to be worst new trend in gaming. And I'm going to call this roguelitification of normal games. Basically, I think in the Shadow of the Success of Balatro, which is an excellent game. There have been attempts to capture that magic in ways that I find entirely like they grab me for a few hours, and then I realize that they're just not good. And I hate to put down people in particular, but the examples that come to mind to me are Slots and Daggers and Clover Pit, which are basically slot machines that have this kind of roguelite method to them. And I think they are missing some of the thing that makes Balatro good, which is kind of like the inherent ability to really tightly the known odds of poker, right? That like which is inherently a more controllable game in the first place than slots are, and two, the kind of like deck building aspect that lets you kind of modify things that makes Balatro really work, and lets you build combos. I really bounced hard off of Clover Pit, and Slots and Daggers similarly had this kind of effect where basically when I downloaded it, there was a bug that gave basically everybody access to the full basically it appears that the dev left in a piece of testing code that gave you enough money to just buy all the upgrades. And I did that, and I played through it, and I realized that like playing through one run with all the coins, that I didn't feel like I really had any control over kind of the outcomes, really, right? I just kind of felt like, the randomness wasn't constrained enough to be useful, and I think people are trying to chase this trend too hard. I also kind of want to throw Ball X Pit into this, which is a little bit less kind of like traditional traditional game, and more like old school, like it's like a breakout style game. But I feel like the randomness isn't adding enough to make the game really interesting. Obviously, I like I said, I hate to shit on anybody, but I just don't think these games are doing it for me. And I expect to get like another half dozen, Balatro, but for other things, right? Like Balatro, but for Yahtzee, right? Like
that's like the obvious one that I can't believe we haven't gotten yet, but whatever.
Balatro for Yahtzee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When we did our Balatro episode, that was one that I just like pitched, because I kind of actually thought I was wrong about this, right? Like I kind of thought this genre had no juice to it. I thought the magic of poker was too good and unreplicatable by sort of any of these other kind of things, which I just think that, like you said, Ball X Pit, Clover Pit, just all of these are proof in the pudding that I was wrong about that.
That's the thing. I think you're right. I don't think these games are very good, right? Like I just don't.
Okay, fair, sure.
Like
I mean, they're good in the sense that they sell a lot of people.
Sure.
I don't know. I sort of want to pitch a fourth-ification. So when we did our big episodes on these last year, we had 3 kind of Titanic episodes back to back to back in my mind that laid out a thesis of indification, roguelitification, and Souls-likeification. I kind of think the fourth one is gambling, like gamblification is what I would say, basically. Which is to say that just removing barriers between players and gambling mechanics is kind of happening, and it's kind of happening everywhere, right? Like obviously this isn't some Derps talk about politics, but like I very easily could make a set of cases about things that are happening outside of the gaming world that play into this trend sort of as well. But inside of the world of gaming, I absolutely think that that's like a destructive force, and it's kind of why I personally have bounced. I haven't even tried these games, to be honest with you. Even Balatro, I kind of doesn't do it for me. It was funny because I was talking about Banner Saga, one of the games that was on that I had available and I was playing a little bit of, and I have played these games to their completion a zillion different times, right? A roguelike deck builder, I've done like 10,000 of these, and I just kind of felt a little gross with Balatro for some reason coming back to it after about a year. So yeah, that is definitely a trend in gaming that I am, shall we say, not enthused by.
Yeah, no. Is the gamification gonna be your pick for worst new trend? Okay.
In a certain sense, I'm just putting a name to the trend that I think that you're hitting on.
So I do want to make a distinction that like the gamification, like the gamification isn't the thing that I'm objecting to here. It's just kind of like blindly slapping roguelite elements onto like normal games, right? Like,
Sure.
if you had like, meta progression for a Go Fish game, I would, maybe put that here. And I do think a part of it is that these are raw kind of games of chance, that are causing the issue. Although this doesn't apply to Ball X Pit, and I like, it doesn't bother me so much from like a kind of moral standpoint, because it's not actually kind of like endorsing them as like real gameplay. There's kind of like the engine, and this is why I think Balatro works and Clover Pit doesn't, right? Because Balatro is using the poker mechanics, but it's just kind of as like this engine for building things up, and it's not like, this isn't like it's not tying. It's not actually like a raw kind of like gambling mechanic, because you're not like following normal rules, right? Like you're layering on kind of like these like abstract gamified rules. And the same thing even with Clover Pit, right? Like the slot machine stuff I don't think they're following normal slot machine rules. The thing that you're talking about that I think is kind of getting there is more like, the thing that I object more to in that space is kind of like the gotchification of a lot of stuff, right? Like, free games where the way they make their money is they get people to spend like $10,000 to get their favorite waifu out of a box, rather than anything else. But that's its own thing.
Musume or whatever, the horse game that people will talk about in Discord sometimes. I just like, you kill me. I feel like I simultaneously hold these games in deep contempt, and also like I'm afraid of them. I think if I ever got into a gacha game, I could 1000% see myself be the kind of person who would spend a ton of cash on it, because frankly, that's what Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone are. And I've spent tons of cash on those games over the years, right? And I, whatever, maybe I would quarrel and make the case that like, well, for all of the hours of fun I got out of Hearthstone or my Magic cards, people do that kind of cope all the time. But at the end of the day, that's what the mechanics kind of are. And I don't know. I'm just deeply uninterested in sort of any of those games, kind of for my own personal like taste and my own personal like mental health,
Sure.
kind of. But my the force that I want to that is bothering me about gaming the most, and this is going to be a weird one, because there's a lot that I could talk about. AI in gaming, obviously, big thing, right? We can talk about friend slop, right, as a category. I've wanted to do a friend slop episode for a while. It's just about figuring out getting the right guest on for it, okay? But the one that I really, really want to just complain about, which is really what I'm feeling here, is delays. Everything takes fucking forever to make now, and I just hate it. Somebody said to me the other day, Mass Effect came out in 2007, Mass Effect 2 came out in 2010, and Mass Effect 3 came out in 2012, okay? So in a 5-year period, we got all three of those games. We know that they are working on a new Mass Effect game, and they have been for, however long, right? But when did Mass Effect Andromeda release? Mass Effect Andromeda came out in 2017. So 8 fucking years ago, okay? And we haven't even seen a whiff of Mass Effect. Grand Theft Auto 6, the original Grand Theft Auto came out 2013. Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be coming out 13 years later, and it's also been delayed about 1,000 times. I don't even like Grand Theft Auto. It's just emblematic of the trend. But the one that really like hits me and kills me was the Total War DLCs from this year. So basically, we were supposed to just get more Total War Warhammer 3 this year than we ever did. And it's just because it kept getting delayed. And listen, I work in the industry. I understand how delays work, man. I have had to on multiple occasions. I did it this year where we announced a release date and we had to push it back by like 6 weeks or something like that, right? But I just want to get to a position where these fucking games are coming out more frequently. They're coming out faster. They are just more back to back, like the goddamn Xbox 360 era. We did a whole trilogy of these Mass Effect games. We did a whole trilogy, kind of of the Dragon Age games, depending on whether or not you count that expansion as a third game, sort of or not. And I just think that, part of what I'm looking at when I think of games that people have denigrated, like Starfield, or these like open world RPGs or whatever, they are taking 8 or 9 years to put together so that they can be full of kind of automated quest slop, in a way, to use a terrible sort of like term for it. And I just want so much less of that. I want these games to be faster, to be quicker, to be dirtier. It's not, I don't need a game map that is the real world size of Nicaragua, right? I just need a couple of square miles by a couple of square miles with some interesting stuff in there. And I'm sure Bethesda can figure out a way to get 80 or 100 hours out of my time from that without too much trouble. So that's the thing that personally annoys me the most recently in games.
Yeah, no, I am rapidly trying to figure this out now, but I wanna check. All right, it is true. It has been longer between the release of like the Elder Scrolls 6 trailer and today than there was between Elder Scrolls 6 and the release of Skyrim, or that trailer and the release of Skyrim. Yeah.
Jesus.
But Todd's releasing another version of Skyrim probably. And to be fair, they did release Starfield. That's the name of it. Which nobody liked, but it is, and apparently somebody released a mod for like make it Star Warsy. That's like huge or something.
I've heard a lot about this. Do you know about the Skyrim mod? I've heard a lot about the 2026 Skyrim mod. Basically, somebody like took it's literally like 1,000 different mods and wrote an extremely complicated sort of packager, and released all of that as a sort of blanket gigantic overhaul that is about kind of updating Skyrim. It uses quite a lot of AI, which is obviously great, to do, especially like voice acting and new lines and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's just the thing that I have seen sort of rumbling around in the base is that actually you should download Skyrim 2026 and play that kind of thing.
Obviously, I don't have the same AI hangups that you do, but that sounds. I don't know. There was, maybe it was maybe it'll be another award category winner, but there was a video I watched at some point about, like, I think it was Elder Scrolls, basically about some drama around essentially a big mod package for a game that, like, the person who was maintaining the package kind of
down the rabbit hole video.
Oh, you know what? That would be it. It was the
unofficial. Yeah, because I also watched that. I honestly don't remember it very well.
The thing I remember was essentially the maintainer kind of like was putting their own their own views, like their own fringe views of the lore, as like packaging them into the mod, and it being its own problem, which is like the thing I worry about with this kind of thing more than kind of like the tooling is the the lore is stupid enough as it is, right? Like, do I need to worry about someone,
I honestly kind of almost feel like I wish I could say that delays in general is sort of like what frustrates me about just like all of culture. Something else I was thinking about is the Avengers came out in 2012. Okay, so we started 2008. 4 years later, we had the Avengers, right? 2 years after that, we have Avengers Age of Ultron. 2 years after that, we have Civil War, right? 2 years after that, we have Infinity War. And then the year after that, we have sort of like Endgame. And it has now been 6 years since another sort of like a mainline Avengers movie has cropped up. And we basically haven't even really like touched any of the interesting sort of like characters. Again, state of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, kind of its own episode. But I was also thinking about like kind of the delay hang up in those sorts of terms as well.
Yeah, I wonder if we're still just kind of like living in the reverb of the pandemic, right? Like, and if we're ever gonna, maybe things will get relatively back to normal in the back half of the decade, which seems like an insane thing to say, but like maybe it's true.
Okay, my next category, my favorite D&D moment of this year. This one, I feel like we've done a couple of times, but I just want to, I don't know. We play a lot of D&D games. This has actually been a truly stellar year for like me in particular when it comes to D&D. I went from basically like one game to like three that are all sort of happening, many of which in person, which, you know, we've obviously talked about on the podcast, the kind of superiority of the in-person stuff. And I have a lot more D&D thought. I'm very pilled because of some of this stuff, but ironically this happened in my online game. The thing I want to call out is the white deer from 7th Expedition. We've talked about this a couple of times on the podcast. I don't think Rachel is awake right now. I'm pretty sure she's taking a nap. But if she were here, I'm sure the chat would be blowing up with, you know, mentions and freaking out about the white deer that cropped up as part of 7th Expedition. The players drank the blood from sort of a living contagion. This heavily mutated beastman named Morgar the Shadow gave. And they inadvertently ended up cursing themselves, where every once in a while they would fail a will save, or I guess a wisdom save, and they would have visions of just this horrific, monstrous white deer, and the visions got more and more sort of horrific over time. And it was just like, this is, I actually kind of think, like the platonic ideal of sort of long running campaign lore in a game like D&D. The players eventually got 3 or 4 visions. The first vision was like they saw the deer. The first vision was they saw the deer on, you know, in the distance, and the deer was eating something. Then they saw the deer much closer, and they realized the deer is their, like, a copy of sort of their body. Then the vision is the deer is eating them. Then the vision was like they were born from the deer and ate their own eyeballs. It was just like truly horrific, gross, fucked up stuff to give them all of this stuff that came from sort of the deer. And that is a mystery that, first of all, I know the funny part about the deer is I know the answer. I know what the deer is. I know how it works. I know all of the rest of it. But the thing that I love about the deer is that they don't know that, and it'll take a while for them to figure out what it is, if they even ever do. It's in 7th Expedition. It's just kind of a fact of the setting that I knew about, and they triggered it, and they eventually cured themselves of the plague curse and no longer have to deal with the deer. But just like in terms of rewarding a lore-based long-form storytelling kind of endeavor that's happening inside of this setting that the players both have kind of control over, and also, you know, because they had control over some other stuff, they opened up a scrying pool to where the deer was, because I gave them the scrying pool and they were like, I want to see the white deer. And I was like, okay. And then the white deer's whole face opens up and there's this tongue, and the tongue starts slithering out of the scrying pool. And they were like, wait, was the deer real? Is it a dream? Is it real? We don't know. They closed the scrying pool, thankfully enough, right? But it's just like all of that is the magic of D&D to me, and it all happened this year. So I'm pretty
So you have summoned Rachel from the nether realm to
yeah.
freak out about the deer in the
The funny
chat.
part about the scrying pool is a modification of something I ran in HPPG literally, 20 years ago. Where I let the players in that crazy game with like Abraham Lincoln, where they made the campaign setting by poll or whatever. Remember that? There was this whole thing with Colonel Steelbrand and Colonel, and they went and found an oracle, and they asked the oracle how to kill the Blood King, and the oracle answered Colonel Steelbrand, like the villain from the first arc of that game, kind of thing. And I was just sort of like borrowing on some of that for the scrying pool. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, that is my favorite D&D moment of the year, the white deer.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. That is that's a really good moment. That's a really crazy set of things to happen.
Listen, you can learn more about the white deer too, man.
we'll see. That feels more like a Lomreth thing than a Dick Blacklass thing.
That's true.
Uh, but what am I going to say for mine? Um, Obviously these are going to be a little bit more character centric for me because um I'm playing from the player's perspective. Um, there's a part of me that wants to say the Soulstorm, right? That was fun and very fun that it was delivered by Dice. Um, there's a part of me that wants to uh there's a hmm, my favorite my most memorable moments I think were the ways I spent my hero points in your game because I love that kind of creative control kind of creative control stuff and um you know the funny one to me was spending my hero point the password for the door is password, right? And it opens. Um, but I do think I managed to I felt like I really grabbed a piece of the narrative in a meaningful way by being like a ghost appears and it's I'm gonna feel bad because I can't remember his name now.
Oh my god, it's his brother. Oh
Yeah,
fuck, what was that guy's name? I can't remember.
yeah, but it is the guard that turns out to be the good. In a twist, it's the good guard as opposed to the bad guard, and he just kind of, uh, you know, and he shows up, and I felt like, and you could hear the table be like, "Oh no," and I was like, "Well, it was probably gonna happen, right?" And that was probably my favorite Singular moment, right? Just because it's a place where I felt like I said that I had a little bit more narrative control. There are bits like that. The whole campaign was nice because I liked the kind of dynamic between between the characters, especially between um my and Rachel's characters. Kind of is. I felt like they were kind of like an old bickering couple, trying to get through it's like the what's it called, the old hats at the prison, and also the ones that had the most uh invested in kind of the actual resolution of the plot. um in retrospect, like maybe that was not the best idea for a game with five people at the table, right, where two people clearly have more more invested than the other characters who are just trying to get home. But I it was fun. It just maybe came at the expense of some of the other characters' agency, which is a little bit less good.
Listen, they could have also, if they wanted, figured some of that stuff out. So they, yeah, because it was Ushran, as Rachel corrects us in the chat, who the name that both of us couldn't remember. The thing I really liked about that moment is I knew the backstory was all there. I knew Ushran had this brother, and I knew his brother had this crisis of confidence when he found the name of Terej, sort of the lost book, in sort of the history, and he tested his own face by walking through one of the gates of light and killed himself, kind of unintentionally, right? But in this crisis of sort of faith, I had that whole thing in my brain, and it was sort of up to you guys to figure it out. In not in necessarily the way of I use a hero point to do this thing, right? But in the sense of unraveling the mystery that was at the heart of um not Taj Teka. What am I thinking? Kalatma, the prison. Unraveling that mystery was up to you guys, see, which is exactly what I feel like. The frustration that we've both expressed about Adventure Path, right? Stuff kind of gets in the way of, right? It was not spoon fed to you. You did not. It's not like you kind of tripped over it. It's not like some NPC had to come up to you and say, well, Ushran's fucking brother, right? Like you had to kind of discover that for yourselves. And I feel like that's kind of just where a lot of the magic of D&D kind of is. And I don't know. Yeah. Also, honorable mention, I didn't think about this until 10 seconds ago, but also a real contender in a less serious but more heartfelt kind of way was the game that we ran at your bachelor party,
Oh yeah,
which was not true D&D, but it
no,
was just, fun.
no, that was very touching, right? Like it's like you said, it's not true D&D, but like you coming out with like these copies of all my characters is just like chef's kiss.
Yeah, all of the characters from all the different timelines go to the Jersey Shore. Just truly stupid, but
Yeah,
very
it was
very
super
fun.
fun. It was
Anyway,
super
so
memorable.
that was my category. What's your next one?
Um, I'm gonna try and phrase this general enough that way you have a way to answer this. You know, Gone Too Soon, Rest in Peace is I'm going to give to and this is meant to be lighthearted. This is not meant to be like a real is
Like the person who died like this year.
no, Supervive. Supervive has been
Mm.
slated to be discontinued. This also happened. I think it was last year, or the year before, with Rumbleverse. These live service games that just can't get enough activity to justify their continued existence, which is um, sad. But I really enjoyed Supervive. There before Arc Raiders came out, Supervive was going to be my pick for Game of Sport of the Year. I really got into it over the summer. I played a ton of it. Obviously, I fell off of it a bit. Um, but I thought it was really unique and really innovative, and I am sad to see it go. Um, it kind of combined battle royale with kind of the top down league thing in a way that I really enjoyed. It also with like the kind of hero selection stuff. And I thought it was a really excellent game. Still is, it's still going for a couple more months, but it will be end of life and it will die. And I just it is a shame because these games are so neat and unique, but I don't think they can survive in um kind of like a half adopted state. And that means it's hard to make a smaller version of these games because they'll just kind of fall off. Or maybe there's just kind of like a balancing act that some of these games just can't hit. Because like the other one that's coming to mind is which has survived obviously is the finals, which is Embark. The people who do Arc Raiders, it's their other game, and that is popular, but or that is played, but like not like obviously like stupefyingly popular. I wonder if Supervive was just like not it was just like below that level even. It feels bad that these excellent games that offer something really unique just can't get above that level to self perpetuate, and I don't know what to do about it there. Uh, maybe this is this kind of crosses over with this kind of like game archival conversation that comes up every once in a while. But like there's how are you going to ever play Supervive in the future? And the answer is kind of like you're not going to be able to, um, which kind of sucks. And so R.I.P. to a real one, Supervive. You will be missed. Have I given you enough time to think of an answer?
Yeah, the funny answer it would be Anthem because Anthem is finally
Oh
getting
yeah.
sunsetted this year. But I also haven't touched Anthem in like 4 or 5 years. So I'm a little like, didn't that already happen? Obviously, I loved Anthem at the time when I played the full like first campaign from when it first launched, but I did never touch it again. So what is that? What does that tell you, kind of thing? The thing I think I want to say, and this is a little complicated because I never actually played the game, but is Stormgate. And
Mm.
also technically, I don't want to break any news on the podcast. I happen to know that Stormgate, actually Frost Giant is the studio behind Stormgate, was really pushed into some kind of tough corners when it came to whether or not they were going to release the game and what state they were going to release the game in. And they ended up pushing the game live this year, which is kind of good for them. I guess I would say that I'm sort of happy that they kind of got it up happy that they kind of got it out there. As a deep lover of StarCraft 2 and RTSs in sort of general, I really wanted Stormgate to kind of be the next level, but the reality is that it never it really struggled to kind of connect with its audience. And the future of development really seems up in the air where Stormgate is going to kind of go. I would not be surprised if I heard some, similar sort of sunsetting talk for Stormgate. Um, deeper into 2025, but this full sort of launch that it experienced this year was really kind of not up to snuff. So I would weirdly answer a game that I have yet to touch, but that released in not a great state, and I guess call it there. Did you ever touch Stormgate? It was in
I
early access for a long time.
I did not. I am not an RTS player by like
Sure.
I realized at some point that I didn't quite like it for whatever reason. Like it got confused in my head with Wildgate, which is another one of these games that um would not surprise me if it kind of hit this fate at some point. Is another multiplayer game that kind of released to like mixed messages. Um, but no, I never played Stormgate just because I don't particularly like RTSs, and I was never particularly interested in it. Which, you know, I feel for all my friends who enjoy that style of game, and so it is in fact a shame. It is in fact a shame.
Okay. The next one that I want to highlight, you know what, we'll do another one for Magic. I wrote this one as my favorite new Magic deck. So I think most people would know that my favorite old Magic deck would be sort of Eureka. But over the course of this year, we have just built a number of decks between sort of the whole team, and our interest in Magic has really kind of skyrocketed. The obvious answer would be Takeja, but I had a whole other category where I kind of talked about Takeja. So and also I here's what I'll say. Takeja is maybe the truest answer, but I also recognize that it's not the funnest deck to play against, and so I don't actually like it as much as I like some of my other decks. And the deck that I actually kind of want to highlight here is Magda Brazen Outlaw, um, which is partially one of my favorite new decks because I think it represents fun and interesting kind of play patterns, in the sense of it assembles an engine around a sort of archetype of character that a creature type that's not all that common, the creature type being dwarf, right? And it has this sort of treasure engine where you can sacrifice a gazillion treasures in order to go find dragons or artifacts out of your deck, which I just think is a really like interesting, fun, cool sort of toolbox to have it. Magda is like interesting, complex. It's not a simple deck. It's not, battle cruiser straightforward. It has real sort of like interaction, and it has this ability to both protect itself and exert power against the rest of the board, which I quite like. But the thing that I like most about it probably is actually the process that me and Rachel put in terms of putting the deck together sort of in the first place, and making it a deck for sort of her to pick up and kind of run with feels pretty good. I actually kind of feel like there's been a pretty deep development of like our sort of play group over the course of the past year. And it has solidified a number of the ways that I think about Magic differently now than I used to, right? Like one of the things we were talking about the other day was sort of the difference between battle cruiser Magic, which is essentially just you make a bunch of big boys, you make a giant big army and you swing it into somebody, versus what I call engine based Magic, where you build your deck is about building this engine, and your engine is going to generate you a certain amount of value that's going to play out and hopefully get you into a place where you can sort of win the game. And I think engine based Magic is pretty superior, I would say, to sort of battle cruiser Magic. And Magda as an engine based deck for Rachel to play, that she and I built together, that is fair for the group but also fun and interesting for the player, all of that kind of makes it my favorite of the new Magic decks I put together this year.
Okay, and sorry, just please repeat the exact category that you named, because I got
category is favorite new Magic deck, so a new deck of 2025 rather than of previous years.
Okay.
Because I know that we both have put together a number of new decks this year.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the answer has to be Jeff, right? Like, and Jeff is a fun deck to play, but he's not really a coherent deck, right? He is a fuck shit up, have chaos. It has some synergy with itself, but um, it's just fun to play from like a kind of novelty standpoint. So I don't necessarily want to put him in this spot just because there's not really a lot to talk about there, right? It's like a lot of wild stuff, and you do wild stuff.
He is definitely kind of your iconic deck. It's funny because I think that this has happened for a number of us where, people become associated with individual decks. For me, for a long time, I think it was Eureka. I actually didn't play Eureka all that much this year, but Takasia has pretty clearly taken sort of that spot. Whereas for someone like Josh, maybe it's like the artifacts or treasures or stuff that he's actually put together an insane number of decks this year, I think also as well. But I feel like if I were to ask anybody in our friend, what is Mango's iconic deck? They would all say Jeff, right? Which is kind of unique and interesting.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. But my favorite one to play when I'm actually like trying to win, I'm looking at my list of decks now, and like I really like Flint, but I haven't played him enough to really have a good feeling on him. Oof. I'm probably gonna go with Stiltskin. Yeah, he's also one of my favorite cards there. So Stiltskin is not a particularly it doesn't have a particularly strong engine, but it can do cool stuff. It just requires, and it has enough draw to kind of like get you into those places. Stiltskin is a card that basically he's a cheap. He's one white mana, and his ability is you spend a mana and you tap him and you give an opponent a card, and they get to use it, right? And basically, I built him to give away bad stuff, right? There's some neat combos that you can get off where you kind of make people instantly lose the game, and that kind of, like the first time I managed to pull that off was like a very very satisfying moment. It's, which I think is just a cool thing to do. It also has like a bunch of kind of like pillow 40 type stuff. My kind of vision for it was to kind of play it half give away bad stuff, half kind of like maybe play politics at the table and be friendly. But I never really get into the friendly board just because it's such a mean deck, right? It's kind of like, I won't give you the bad stuff is the best politics for it to play. At some point, I think I want to build like a real kind of like what's the group hug deck, and try and see if I can get that get that to go off. The other contender here was maybe Yurlock, because he's fun and things go fast. But I think Stiltskin has to take it. They're just
Yurlock gained such a reputation so fast among our play group. I actually think of Yurlock and Eureka as similar decks. I kind of like both of them quite a lot, specifically because they just do a ton of damage to the board really fast. They make for very fast games, which feels really good.
I would say the thing about Yurlock is it like gives it hands your opponents the tools to kill you if they have them in hand, right? Like have some mana and you better fucking spend it or it's gonna hurt you, right? And there's some very cool cards. We played on Thursday with Yurlock, and there's some cool cards. It's like if you leave any of your lands untapped, you're gonna have to sacrifice one, right? You can get up to 2 extra lands, but you have to give me one, right? Like that is all super fun stuff to me. So Yurlock, I think, is just a little too fragile to be like super duper fun, but Stiltskin has like enough staying power and enough kind of I feel like I can like reasonably get wins with it. My other decks I think need more work. But Stiltskin is what is it? Bruvac. Bruvac's a great deck, but it's too good. It's just too good, right? Like I've unintentionally won with it too many times.
I also want to say I think people this would be I'm sorry to some of our friends in the chat because I'm about to make fun of you a little bit. Bruvac plays into mill strategy, so Bruvac says whenever you a player would mill a card, they mill twice that, many instead, kind of thing. Um, the thing that makes Bruvac feel so brutal is the way that people psychologically trick themselves with mill as like a strategy or an understanding. Have we talked about this on the podcast? There's this principle of, do you loot at 0 cards? Do you know what that means?
No.
Okay, so this is a super classic Magic the Gathering strategy. Okay, imagine a situation. It's a thought experiment. Imagine a situation. You're playing Magic. You have a Merfolk looter. Merfolk looter taps, says draw a card, then discard a card, right? You have a hand of 0, no cards in hand, right? It is the end of your opponent's turn. You can tap your Merfolk looter. If you tap it, you will have to immediately discard the card. Do you, absent any recursion, any graveyard synergy, whatever, do you tap the card, right? This is sort of the philosophical thought experiment. Have I really never explained this on the cast before?
No, I don't think so, because
Okay.
Like I don't understand. Like I don't see why you would, right? Like
It generates value. This was the whole point of the thought experiment. Most players would say no, right? Because it's robbing me of value, right? I could draw and discard the best card in my deck, right? And that feels really bad, right? But the thought experiment, or the argument that gets made, and it's made by essentially spiky kind of high-end players. This is all about pro players who are essentially kind of making this scenario, is that a card in your library is at its least valuable to you, because at least you know what your odds are of drawing any other card in your deck by drawing and flipping that card into the graveyard. You now know whatever that card is, the odds of your deck changing to be different and better. And that information is valuable enough that you do the thing. And it basically talks about how, like, mill is a strategy that feels bad, because what happens is people see a bunch of cards flip into the graveyard and they go, oh my God, oh, I was going to draw. This is so cool. This is like the greatest card. But the reality is that you're going to draw cards anyway. Mill doesn't remove cards. It doesn't remove value player. They still have access to they still have access to value. They still have access to the cards in their deck. Very few people are ever going to mill themselves out sort of entirely, right? You still get to draw, you still get to draw the card, and the deck is essentially random, right? It's this random number generator where it doesn't matter whatever you flipped off the top. It's gone. Who cares? You're going to get another card. Figure out how to sort of like win the game from there. This is like a really complex thing that I just don't think most players understood. I learned it as part of my kind of foray into PTQ Pro Tour qualifier Magics when I was a fucking like kid or whatever. If some guy explained this concept to me and I did not get it because I was 12. But it's funny because now I understand it completely, and I'm like, oh yes, I don't care what gets milled off the top of my library. Sure, mill me 24 cards, mill me 25 cards. It's just going to give me more information that I need in order to find a winning line, right? Which is, for instance, like in that Takeda game, right? About letting the Nexus of Fate resolved, because I kind of knew where that game was going to go, and I had to set myself up for the game-winning play of get Nexus of Fate in the deck, use it to chain an extra turn for my approach the second sun to get the win, kind of. Anyway, because people don't have the intuitive understanding of, it doesn't actually matter what gets milled, you're still going to draw a card anyway. It feels so much worse than it actually is in terms of raw game sort of like facts on the ground. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Maybe actually I want that was really complicated. I want to sum this up in the simplest way that I possibly can. When a card is on the top of your deck, it's like it's in Schrodinger's box, right?
Sure.
You don't know that the top 5 cards in your deck are the 5 best or the 5 worst cards in your deck. They all represent some percentage chance to be the best and worst cards of the deck. When you flip the cards into the graveyard, the probability of whatever that is sort of collapses, but it doesn't remove the amount of that is a card draw. One card draw is always valuable, and mill does not prevent you from drawing cards. There will be other cards in your deck to draw, even if you mill some of your favorite or most powerful cards into the. That's the principle at play. that I
Yeah.
think people misunderstand about Bruvac.
No, I agree. I just think that for our group, Bruvet, I only played it a couple of times, but like it just was a little too fast for like satisfying games, right? Like I managed to pull a couple of like really gross wins out of Bruvac. Um,
Listen,
including
I was able to pull an insane win against Bruvac at your bachelor party, right? Because that was the Bruvac versus. I actually think I lost that game. It was Bruvac versus Stella, but I looped my graveyard into my library 2 or 3 times. Do you remember that game?
yeah.
That I liked that game because it was like a particularly interesting challenge. Even if I do think I ended up losing. And so anyway, I wanna put a little +1 in Bruvac. I think Bruvac is cool.
Yeah, no, I think what it really is Bruvac has a 2-card combo, right? It's got like mill half your deck, and then you have Bruvac out, and you mill, all of you mill all your deck, right? And it's all your opponents, right? So it's just like an instant win. That and like it dodges most normal kind of this is the problem with most of these decks that feels bad, right? Like is it dodges most kind of like normal stuff. You just kind of got to be ready for that. You should all probably be running more stapley kind of counter spells and stuff, but that's
I also have been thinking a lot about like the way that we prioritize kind of like attacking and stuff like that, right? Like Bruvac is a little bit like Takasia in the sense that it's a very defensive deck.
Yeah.
Takasia is going to win most often by like looping an approach the second sun. And sometimes it doesn't happen, right? I've obviously won in a couple of other sort of like places, but it just sort of means that like people need to be actively pressuring life totals in a way that is a little bit different than I don't know. I have a whole thing about the philosophy of attacking in Commander in the nature of our play group. I actually really want to make a couple of big stompy-ish kind of decks just to sort of show this principle off, where it's like, yeah, even if the attack is bad, even if you're pieces, you just need to swing hard on somebody, pressure their life total, make them spend resources, right? Or just kind of invest and say, hey, listen, my engine is more powerful than yours and I can afford to swing out here, and even if you kill my 2 best things, I'm hitting you with the 5 others, and that's going to dent your life total by a third or something kind of along those sorts of lines. Generally, I think what happens is people get too protective of their own sort of stuff, myself included.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's its own thing.
Yeah, I think part of it is that like because a lot of your cards are used for their effects on the card, you're afraid to kind of like be aggressive with them, but they're always just kind of like a board wipe away from getting screwed up anyway, right? I think that's part of it. I also think that like I think it's just like a lesson to learn, right? Like that's a lesson I learned best on AC, where like part of it is that like those creatures are there to hit people in the face, so you might as well, right? I just think people are afraid to kind of like. There's a fine line between like swinging pointlessly because like your opponent has the blocks to just kind of like peel stuff off the board, and also being willing to trade evenly with things to kind of to kill things. So
yeah, this is a little bit of what I'm sort of like getting after as well, where it's like it's not even just about pressuring life total, it's also about pressuring their board state, right? Maybe they can block and they can chump. So for instance, here's the thing that happens all the time. Somebody will go, I could swing at you, but you're just going to chump me with that, so it doesn't matter. And it's like, that's good, you're killing their creature if they chump it, right? Pressure that, right? Like put that kind of pressure on the table. There's some other stuff in there too, like the board wipes is a good one. So the board wipe that I had this game-winning board wipe the other day at your house where, what did I cast? It was something that just crushed the board, and it was because I guess you were playing Jasper and had overextended.
well,
and that's the thing that
I just didn't have a what's it called, a way to stop it, right? Like I didn't really overextend. I just like had a bunch of stuff on the board, and
well, no, so this is exactly kind of what I mean, which is to say that like something I've been thinking about is like, when do I hold stuff in hand to refill? When have I committed enough strength to the board to sort of have the active engine, but if I board wipe, I'm going to be able to recover effectively? Which was the story of that game, right? Like it was I I don't remember the state of affairs. But the thing that triggered my thought of like, oh, I should rip the board wipe now is because I saw that you had 2 cards in hand and you had the most threatening board. And I was like,
Right.
oh, I'm pretty sure if I wipe right here, I'm going to be able to take Mango out without
Right.
too much trouble. He's
No,
just
that
not
makes
going to be able
sense.
to
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like refill. And this is the thing that like I've done this before, to be honest with you, where I just have sat and played, dumped my whole hand into a huge fat board wipe and then gone, ugh, I guess I lose.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, fair enough.
okay, I don't remember whose category it was.
It's mine.
Okay.
Because you just did, you know, favorite deck of the year. So
Oh, sure.
um
Yes.
do what do I have left on this list that I want to do? I'm gonna say best new YouTube channel, and by new I don't necessarily mean like was created this year, but kind of like rose in prominence this year. And for me, that's gonna be Tor's Cabinet of Curiosities, which is it's this like very weirdo guy who I think is in New York now, but was usually in the Pacific Northwest, just like doing these like fun essays on like very obscure topics. Essentially, it's kind of like Wikipedia diving is maybe the best way I could put it. But he goes into a lot of detail about like very random subjects. Like he had a video about a very informative video about you know, kind of like how like the social credit score in China isn't really real. You know, about how like basically how that basically not only about like the kind of shadow of the thing that kind of sort of existed in China, but also like how that kind of got mistranslated and exported over to the West as kind of like a story about China. Um, all the way to things like, you know, a story about a woman who claimed to have visions of Mary, and a whole cult that like rose up around her in Wisconsin. Um, and you know, and like the many minor scandals that surrounded it, and how there's still like a branch of it that exists today that you can go see if you really want to, um, which is super interesting. And I think he does a pretty good job. Again, I don't think he does a perfect job of anything. I think he's for instance a little bit too much of a fanboy of Wikipedia in its kind of raw form and doesn't recognize its some of its flaws. But he has very well researched topics. Like one of the Wikipedia videos is about how the at one point the most translated page on Wikipedia was for Corbin Blue, who is just like is a character in High School Musical, but not even the important one, right? It's just some dude, and it's not the actor. It's just some dude who, like, for whatever reason, is translated Corbin Blue into like every language that you could imagine on Wikipedia. Who eventually gets found out and gets some of these articles taken away because they're just kind of like, you know, machine translated into like, you know, Apache or whatever other minor languages that Wikipedia has. It's kind of like a weird project or whatever, but it's interesting content. It's a great way to burn like an hour or half an hour if you watch on double speed like me. But he just does really decent content, and it's a great watch. Yeah.
Cool.
What,
Fuck yeah. My answer is probably not that it is this year, but definitely rose to prominence this year would make it easy for me, which is to say the Distraction Makers podcast. I have really just loved Distraction Makers. It's funny because I actually disagree with them a lot. And a lot of where we have talked about them on this podcast is where sort of my personal philosophies about design or whatever else kind of like run up against some of the stuff that they have kind of like put up or put together, right? But the thing I appreciate about it, and the thing that they do, I think, better than kind of a truly large number of people sort of in this space, is understand sort of like the raw game design that is just the beating heart of the games that we play and love. Obviously, they're very focused on Magic. They talk about Commander and they talk about Standard, a bunch of different kinds of things. But their ability to sort of understand the ways in which the game sort of works, and talk about that just far outstrips, in my mind, most of these other podcasts. To be fair, which I listen to a lot of them, most of the other podcasts that talk about sort of Magic the Gathering and Commander as a subject, honestly, they do such a good job of it that I would maybe even say I I dislike listening to them sometimes because they kind of ruin the Magic game. Um, Part of what attracts me to games like Magic is the, kind of like figuring out the complexity for yourself and coming to sort of understandings about cards that have elegant design that you like that aren't necessarily like good, but are interesting and fun. Takeja being probably the easiest example of a card that kind of falls in that category as a lore forward character who has interesting, compelling, kind of like part of the Magic story that I'm deeply connected to, and also has an interesting set of gameplay mechanics and an interesting set of colors that you can build a unique and interesting commander deck around. It gets a little bit lost when you have people who are so good at dissecting the game that they kind of like cut underneath some of those pieces. But I would say they are kind of the best in the business at it, and I just really have loved spending time there this year. So
That makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah. What's the There's like an expression. It's like it's like explaining a joke is like dissecting a frog. You kill it in the process. I feel like you get the same sort of um you know effect when you read mechanics too closely.
Yeah,
To
I
your,
think
your
about
point.
their like the strategy circle, which is a
Yeah.
true thing, right? That speed beats strength, strength beats defense, defense beats speed kind of thing, which is true. I think that that's like very much real, right? Like Yuriko needs to pressure people's life totals on turns 2, 3, 4, 5, because on turn 6 or 7, AC just has fucking 8/8s that are going to kick my teeth in.
Right.
That's the like you kill them fast or you die kind of thing, right? Whereas maybe Guff or like Ranar or something would make a really powerful defensive engine that AC can attack with all of the 8/8s that he wants. I just exile them with Ranar's effects and generate all this value by blinking stuff and being annoying, all of that kind of thing. And so figuring out those pieces is a lot of fun when you don't necessarily reduce the game down to rock paper
Yeah.
scissors. So that's kind of I definitely think that it's like dissecting a frog. You kill it in the process for sure.
Yeah. Also, there's this weird thing where we managed to front run them by 2 weeks in a lot of cases with different stuff.
Yeah, true. Listen, just that they're a podcast after our own heart, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, we are definitely past time. I feel like that's an okay place to end it. Do you have any final categories that you wanted to do?
I don't think I have. I basically I think burned through all the ones that I wanted to get to. Did you have a final one that you wanted to
I
hit
did
on?
have a final one, which was
Okay.
best podcast that I was going to say distracted makers for. So I, you kind of handed that one in, I guess I would say, sort of the final moments of the game.
Okay, sure, fair enough. Yeah, do I have a specific podcast that I want to shout out before just kind of as a bridge thing? Um, I don't know. Like, you know what? You said this isn't my favorite new podcast of the year is Central Air, which I know you're a fan of as well. So which is a political podcast, but is has been fun just mostly because I like the personalities involved. In particular, I think Ben Dreyfuss is very funny. Go read his Substack is called Calm Down. It's fun too, but that is as spicy as I think I will get with the politics. Although we could also talk. Do you listen to Magic Mirror?
Magic Lear? I guess
Mirror. This is the
Magic Mirror?
This is Trinket Mage, Salubrious Snail, and I forget who the third one is.
Oh, I have seen a number of their videos on YouTube. I have not listened to any of the podcasts, I don't think.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it is on Trinket Mage's. It is hosted on Trinket Mage's channel if you watch it on YouTube.
Okay.
But I have it in my podcatcher, and funnily enough, they tend to release on Mondays. So like, I will most commonly listen to it on the drive to your house for either TNT or Magic. So
Hell
it
yeah.
works out pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, those are two topical or one topical and one non-topical podcast recommendations for people out there. Yeah. Actually, funnily enough, Forrest. from Distraction Makers was on it recently. He's been doing the kind of rounds of like visiting other places to drum up.
That's good. I actually secretly, it's funny because I think of a lot of the insight as coming from Griffin, the other guy on that podcast. But I just like Forrest better, to be honest. He's just sort of like dumber and more affable in the way about, like, he is the one who pitched the Bumblefogger deck, which I am eventually going to build because I think it is funny and I want to make it. And so just like that kind of stuff is, I'm interested. I'm hyped. I want to see where it goes.
Oh man. So two things. One, he for Christmas he went on like a one of these actual play commander channels, like a smaller one, and the deck he built to give away was a deck with just as many triggers as possible to make the other person have to track them all. It had day night. It had fucking the ring bearer. They did
so brutal.
They did a Distraction Makers podcast on it as a follow up. So then where they tiered like the obnoxiousness of the effects, but actually watching the video where they played it was pretty funny.
I have secretly, it's funny. We've been sharing our decks recently, and I've been thinking about like that process. But the game that we played where playing sort of Yuriko off the top at the Nexus of Fate or whatever, maybe, or not Yuriko, Takesia, maybe be like, boy, the minute that anybody rolls Takesia except for me, they are going to have a bad time because it's such a complicated deck. And just the thing of when I'm playing Takesia and I have 8 creatures out and they're all going to untap on somebody's next turn, I just tap them all and I just look at the top 8 cards and I know which ones to mill, which ones to keep. So I just mill down to a good card that I'm like, oh, I need this, and then I'll just kind of like hold it there, kind of thing. Imagine a world where like Josh needs to read every single one of those 8 cards and be like, is this good? Buddy, should I put this? And it's just, like, I think that will be a tough day.
Yeah, I agree. I have one fun exercise to go off this on. This is inspired by a friend of the cast, Tracy, who posed something like this to me last night. Buddy, name your favorite 3 commanders.
In my play group, like in my decks?
Define it however you want. Name
Yuriko, Takesia, I don't even know that I have a good third. Magda, I guess, is the third one that I use.
All right. Fuck, marry, kill. Go.
That's honestly a good one. Well, obviously I'm going to I think I'm going to marry Yuriko because I want to be together with her for the. I think I'm going to fuck Takesia because I like her deck better than Magda, even though she is canonically an old woman, like a grandmother. And I guess that leaves me killing Magda. So rip to a good dwarven outlaw.
Last night when Tracy sprang this on us, what did we? Brian and I came up with, just again before she revealed what the exercise was Ian Malcolm, Takesia, and Lord Windgrace, and like Ryan and we both like, actually I don't know what Takesia looks like. We both had to look it up to figure out that she was an old woman.
So she's a MILF, okay.
Yeah, I ended up doing marry Jeff Goldblum, fuck Takesia, killed Lord Windgrace because I ain't no furry.
Lord Windgrace. Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah. I did want to do kind of like just find 3 rabbit commanders and throw it at some, like Preston, Bumbleflower, and there's a couple other ones, but none that are super recognizable. But yeah, that's a great. I think that's a good place to end the podcast at. Unless you had anything else you wanted to go over.
No. I have nothing else to go over. So.
If you'd like to email us with your fuck, marry, kill list of commanders, you can email us at snurfsgames@gmail.com or podcast@snurfsgames.com. You can reach us, or you can watch us at snurfs or youtube.com/@snurfsgames or twitch.tv/snurfsgames. So these go out live. Rate, review us wherever you find podcasts. We have a Patreon too. Everything should be down in the description. Buddy, do you have anything else you're looking to promote?
I have nothing else that I'm looking to promote.
Right. Well, in that case, I will say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.